Fiction paints insectoid aliens as ruthless hive minds, but science suggests a much broader range of possibilities and survival strategies. From solitary hunters to vast hives, insectoid aliens could be amongst the most alien minds we ever meet, and perhaps the most common. We tend to think of aliens as little green men, but if we are taking our cues from nature, it's far more likely there'll be little green beetles, or at least something with an exoskeleton, jointed legs, and a remarkable ability to survive nearly anywhere. Insects are Earth's true masters, found in every climate from frozen tundra to the hottest deserts, and often in swarms that reshape entire ecosystems. That makes them an obvious candidate when we imagine alien life, and in fiction, insectoid aliens have ranged from noble warrior species to nightmare swarms devouring worlds, mostly the latter. Here on Earth, insects are not just numerous, they are astonishingly adaptable. Beetles alone make up a quarter of all known animal species, around 400,000 at last count. Many survive extremes of heat, cold, radiation, and vacuum-like dryness. They communicate chemically, visually, and through vibrations, and many of them have social structures that rival human organization, without a single brain in charge. Ants and termites, for example, operate as decentralized, self-organizing systems that can farm, wage war, and build monumental structures. Bees are notorious for their impressive abilities as well, and right before I wrote this episode, my wife and I were harvesting honey from our own hives, and it stirred me to wonder what other options for evolution these critters might have beyond the more common tropes we see in science fiction, though we'll look at those today too. And needless to say, it's easy to see how evolution elsewhere might produce something similar. On a planet with different conditions, maybe higher or lower gravity, denser atmosphere, or toxic chemistry, an exoskeleton might be the best solution for protection and mobility. Fast-breeding, highly specialized individuals could form castes, with evolution favoring cooperation because it boosts the survival odds of the whole genetic lineage. And if communication is efficient enough, you might end up with something akin to a hive mind. Not in the science fiction sense of a single consciousness, though that is possible, but in the biological sense of many individuals acting as if they were one creature. We have discussed hive minds before, and recently, in our Fermi Paradox and the Hive Mind Dilemma episode, where the question wasn't whether they could exist, but how they would behave on a galactic scale. Would such species be unusually stable and peaceful because internal conflict is minimal, or would they be ruthlessly expansionist, treating other civilizations like rival colonies to be displaced or consumed? Fiction often favors the latter, from the Tyranids of Warhammer 40,000 to the bugs of Starship Troopers, the movie, not the book. But reality may be more complex, with a spectrum of possible hive models, each with their own quirks and limits. And hive biology doesn't imply a hive mind as the only option either. One queen laying many eggs does not necessarily mean no brains individually, nor is that the pathway of all insects. Hive reproduction strategy. One common objection to insectoid aliens, at least those the size of people or larger, is that our own evolutionary path treated the high egg-laying strategy for fewer, well-developed young. Humans invest enormous time and resources in each child, which allows for extended learning and social development, but at the cost of reproductive speed. Insects, on the other hand, often lay hundreds or thousands of eggs, with little to no parental care for most species, relying instead on sheer numbers to ensure survival. However, this trade-off is not absolute. Some social insects, like ants and termites, have already demonstrated a hybrid strategy. A single queen produces all the colony's offspring, while a workforce of sterile individuals cares for and defends the young. If we scale that system up, giving our hypothetical aliens larger brains, longer lifespans, and more demanding developmental needs, the concept still works. A queen could lay fewer eggs than her smaller Earth cousins, perhaps only a few dozen a year, but each larva would be tended constantly by nurse castes until maturity. Also, there's no hard and fast rule that eggs have to be large. A queen bee, for instance, lays 1,500 to 2,000 eggs a day during peak season, and sometimes up to 3,000, totaling a few million over her lifetime. Remarkably, the mortality rate for those eggs is relatively low compared to much of nature. Most honeybee eggs that are laid will reach adulthood, something even humans struggle to achieve before modern medicine. Interestingly, that lifetime total is about the same as the number of eggs a human female is born with, 1 to 2 million, whereas many small mammals have only tens of thousands. Creatures that lay larger eggs tend to produce fewer of them, as these are grown internally to a much greater size before being laid. Each egg contains far more nutrients, raising the energy cost per egg enormously, but also increasing the survival odds. Many species lay huge numbers of tiny eggs, most of which die before or shortly after hatching. From an evolutionary perspective, this yields 3 broad strategies. 1. The reptile and bird approach, a few larger, higher energy eggs with low mortality. 2. The mammalian approach. The egg develops internally to full birth size within the mother. 3. The hive approach. Vast numbers of eggs from a single queen, but instead of abandoning them, care is delegated to other hive members, typically sterile older sisters or aunts. Insectoid evolutionary paths. We might imagine it to be relatively likely that a larger organism would tend to utilize option 1 or 2, or perhaps a hybrid of them with option 3. Though before proceeding, let me note this caveat. In theory, a larger organism can actually lay more small eggs, and this strategy is not limited to creatures with exoskeletons, nor is exoskeleton size necessarily facing the same hard limit we see on Earth. You could have a queen laying thousands of eggs per day of creatures with a human or elephant size and lifetime range, and for our context, most larger nations have birth rates similar to what a honeybee queen lays, a few thousand a day, so an entire planet might be populated with only a few dozen queens who control major nation-sized areas, true kingdoms, or even just one. Nor is there any particular reason to assume it is impossible for an insect hive to pursue a multi-queen strategy, though that does seem more of an uphill lift in evolutionary terms. In any event, let's assume a hybrid strategy for the moment. Fewer but many eggs tended by sterile relatives. This would allow for slow-growing, intelligent young that could still benefit from centralized reproduction systems. With a large enough colony and sufficient resources, the reproductive rate could easily rival or exceed that of humans, especially if the queen is long-lived and supported by a stable, well-fed worker population. Unlike more solitary large animals such as elephants or whales, a hive society could scale its population faster during expansion periods, while also absorbing losses without endangering the species as a whole. Evolution could easily favor such a system in an alien biosphere, especially in environments where group cooperation offers more survival value than individual autonomy, as indeed is presumably the case here on Earth, where humans and many other large mammals use herd or pack social structures. In short, there's nothing biologically impossible about an intelligent, large-bodied hive or insect species, even one that grows slowly. Incidentally, humans are not descended from insects. Something like us could presumably descend from them too, but we are not an example of an advanced insectoid alien ourselves. Current evolutionary theory holds that our common ancestors were early animals that shared bilateral symmetry, living some 500 million years ago during the Cambrian period. These creatures were probably small, soft-bodied, and lived in the oceans, with nothing remotely like an insect's exoskeleton or a vertebrate's backbone. From this humble start, 2 very different paths emerged, one leading to arthropods with their segmented bodies, jointed limbs, and chitinous armor, and the other to chordates with internal skeletons and eventually backbones. That split is so ancient that an insectoid alien and a human would have less in common, genetically and anatomically, than we do with a squid or a starfish. Their biochemistry, sensory systems, and even their fundamental approach to movement, communication, and reproduction could be wildly different from ours. This evolutionary gulf means that insectoid aliens, even if intelligent, might think, perceive, and prioritize in ways far more alien than a humanoid species ever could. And it's why they've long been a favorite archetype in science fiction for representing the truly other. One of the most iconic traits of insects is, of course, their exoskeleton. It's both a strength and a limitation. On the plus side, it's a natural suit of armor, lightweight, flexible, and offering excellent protection from predators, dehydration, and environmental hazards. An exoskeleton also provides strong leverage for muscles, allowing creatures to perform feats of strength and agility disproportionate to their size. On a small scale, it's one of evolution's most successful designs, helping arthropods dominate nearly every ecosystem on Earth. But there's a catch. As an organism grows, the exoskeleton does not grow with it. That means molting, shedding the old armor and growing a new, larger one. For small insects, this is a brief if vulnerable stage. For large insectoid organisms, this process would be far riskier, potentially taking longer and leaving them exposed to predators or environmental dangers. This might be okay in a hive environment though, where the vulnerability could be shielded by the hive. Those undergoing molting retreat and rest or work inside, while those not molting play guardians and scouts and foragers. There are other problems though. In a high-gravity environment, the weight of a massive exoskeleton could become a serious metabolic cost, requiring stronger muscles and more food just to move around. On a low-gravity world, these limits would loosen, perhaps allowing truly colossal insectoid creatures to evolve without being crushed by their own armor. Also, while we shouldn't assume an alien breathes, given that it's hardly universal on Earth, another constraint is respiration. Most insects breathe through spiracles and a network of trachea that diffuse oxygen directly into their tissues, an efficient system at small sizes, but one that struggles to scale up without very high atmospheric oxygen levels. Earth once had such conditions, during the Carboniferous period, where dragonflies grew wingspans over 2 feet. An alien biosphere with similar or higher oxygen concentrations could allow insectoids to grow larger and more complex without abandoning their basic respiratory system. Alternatively, some might evolve hybrid solutions, partially sealed respiratory organs, or even vertebrate-like circulatory systems for oxygen transport, breaking through the size ceiling imposed on Earth's insects. The exoskeleton itself might also evolve in new forms. On a toxic or high-radiation world, it could be thickened, layered, or impregnated with reflective or absorptive compounds, turning the alien's body into a walking hazmat suit. On an ocean planet, an exoskeleton might function more like a turtle shell, blending hydrodynamics with protection. Some could even combine chitin with bioceramics or other metallic elements, creating armor that rivals early human steel. We could even imagine a planet with more hydrogen or helium content in the atmosphere, implying colder temperatures, higher pressures, or higher gravity, and could result in thick but mostly hollow shells filled with hydrogen or helium serving as buoyant lifting material to lighten them, and additional armor or radiation shielding, and even potentially as a fuel cell for a different sort of metabolism. All of this ties back to social and reproductive strategies. If your species is slow-growing and molting is dangerous, it may make sense to cluster together in fortified hives or colonies during vulnerable stages, or to stagger molts so the colony never has too many defenseless members at once. An intelligent insectoid species might coordinate such life stages with almost military precision, ensuring that at any given time the hive remains well defended. These physical constraints don't make large insectoids impossible, they simply shape how they would live, grow, and interact with their environment. In the right conditions, evolution could push them toward a balance between strength and vulnerability, speed and endurance, individuality, and cooperation. And that balance might produce alien civilizations every bit as sophisticated as our own, yet born from bodies and instincts utterly unlike anything we know. Signals in the swarm. In science fiction, insectoid hive minds are often depicted as communicating through instant telepathy, a shared mental network where the thoughts and orders pass from queen to worker at the speed of imagination. It is a striking image, and one that's perfect for drama and menace, but here on Earth, insects achieve remarkable coordination without anything resembling mind-to-mind contact. Their communication is entirely physical and chemical, and it works astonishingly well. Bees perform the famous waggle dance to tell hive mates where nectar can be found, encoding direction, distance, and quality of food source in a set of movements lasting just seconds and offering very precise navigation directions. It is rather fascinating to take a frame out of your hive and turn it and watch them shift accordingly. Ants leave chemical trails of pheromones that guide others to food, sound alarms, or even mark territory boundaries. Crickets and katydids produce sounds by rubbing body parts together, a practice called stridulation, to attract mates or warn rivals. Many insects can also send visual signals using body posture, color flashes, or bioluminescence, as with fireflies. Some species even detect and respond to vibration in plants or the ground, effectively speaking through their environment. These systems have a few key advantages over telepathy, besides being possible. They are robust. A pheromone trail persists for hours or even days without continuous broadcasting, while sound and vibration can carry over long distances or through obstacles. They are also decentralized. No single individual has to maintain the whole network. And crucially, they evolve organically out of physical abilities and environmental cues, rather than requiring exotic biology like brain-to-brain transmission, which would be very hard to evolve. If we imagine insectoid aliens, it's far more plausible they would use some expanded version of these methods rather than direct telepathy. Advanced pheromones could convey complex sentences of information, with different blends signaling everything from resource levels to emotional states. Bioluminescent flashes might be coding the alien equivalent of Morse, or coordinated wing beats could create atmospheric pressure pulses detectable kilometers away. With advanced technology, they might build communication infrastructure to amplify and store these signals, the Hive's equivalent of radio towers and data servers, or loudspeakers, allowing them to scale their coordination across entire continents or planets. Even a true hive mind could emerge without telepathy, if the communication system is fast and rich enough. A colony could behave almost like one organism, simply because every member is constantly updating and responding to shared cues, much like neurons in a brain. The mind would not be located in any one head, but in constant dynamic exchange of information between all members. That's not only biologically plausible, it's already here on Earth, in miniature, every time you watch ants converge on a breadcrumb. Sensory worlds. If we are going to picture intelligent insectoids, we have to remember that their sensory reality could be as alien as their bodies. Many insects on Earth can see ultraviolet light, detect polarized light for navigation, or perceive rapid flickers far beyond their own visual threshold. Some have compound eyes that sacrifice fine detail for nearly panoramic vision, while others have simple eyes as well for depth perception. Antennae can detect minute chemical traces in the air, kind of smell and taste combined, to map out invisible roads for their colony. Scale that up to intelligent species, and you might have aliens whose cities are filled with glowing ultraviolet street signs we would never notice, besides getting tanned or burned, or who communicate with chemical bursts invisible to us but rich with meaning to them. A political rally might be as much a war of scent and pheromone as speech. They might decorate homes in patterns optimized for compound eyes, incomprehensible to ours, and they could wage covert battles with chemical camouflage, using counter-pheromones to confuse enemy patrols. If their main language is a blend of smell, vibration, and polarized light, any off-world ambassador would need a very strange translator. Intelligence and individuality in hive species. One common science fiction trope is the total submersion of the individual into the hive, the classic mindless drone. But nature on Earth shows us a more nuanced picture. Ants, bees, and termites are not literally mindless. Individuals can make decisions, explore, and even go rogue in small ways. They are dumb because they are small and have few brains, not because they are part of a bigger collective. More brains would advantage them, though of course they require more resources per individual. In an intelligent hive species, the independence might be much greater. In such a society, autonomy and identity could exist in far greater depth than fiction tends to imply, or than we see in earthly examples. Hive minds don't have to worry about workers going on strike, but maybe hive-originated species still do, and that's something Orson Scott Card played with in some of his later novels in the Enderverse series, that you might have more autonomy and brains in individuals or a certain caste of individuals. Were that the case, conflict could still arise when individual desires run counter to the hive's needs. Perhaps some individuals dream of founding their own colonies without royal permission, or even defect to another hive entirely, the alien equivalent of treason. Hive architecture and technology. The engineering of an intelligent insectoid species might take cues from Earth's master builders, termites, who create towering mounds with internal air conditioning systems, or ants, who weave leaves together into living shelters. These structures could be organic, interwoven with living plant matter, or even grown from bioengineered chitin secreted by specialized builder castes. Rather than skyscrapers with empty space between floors, they might prefer dense networks of tunnels and chambers to maximize surface area for communication and climate control. Brood chambers might be climate sealed, with temperature and humidity regulated down to fractions of a degree, while chemical airlocks keep unwanted scents from drifting between zones. They might have an easier time settling barren worlds like the Moon or Mars, as primarily underground life might be entirely fine by them. If they develop space habitats, you might see enormous honeycomb-like structures optimized for redundancy and resource distribution, with entire decks dedicated to molting, hibernation, or egg incubation. Their starships might even mimic living hives, a kind of bioship with distinct castes of crew specialized for navigation, maintenance, or defense. Privacy probably isn't a concern for species that literally think together, but for those of us who don't have a collective consciousness, keeping our digital lives secure matters a great deal. That's where today's sponsor, Private Internet Access VPN, comes in. Think of a VPN like a protective bubble around your data stream. Without one, using the internet is like shouting your secrets into the void. And unlike the Fermi paradox, someone really is listening. PIA shields your connection with world-class encryption, hiding your IP address and keeping out hackers, advertisers, government censors, and even your internet service provider. I've been using PIA myself for years. It's fast, reliable, and I can switch between servers in 91 countries and all 50 US states with just one click. That way I can also gain access to websites and services that are only available in those locations. And the best part is, one subscription covers every device in my household, which is handy when you guys have many gadgets as we do. So, if you want your own secure cosmic bubble, head to pivpn.com/IsaacArthur for 83% off. That's just $203 a month, with 4 extra months free. And of course, it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Alien ecology and predators. Intelligence does not evolve in a vacuum. On Earth, insect hives evolved in part because they offered protection against predators and competition for resources. For an alien insectoid species, the drivers might be even stranger. Perhaps they share a planet with massive aerial hunters, forcing them to build subterranean or armored hive cities, or maybe they evolved alongside another intelligent species, a rival hive type, creating an arms race of adaptation, deception, and alliance. Or they might simply war with each other, or otherwise compete, as we often see with insects now. They might also be aggressive ecosystem managers. Just as leafcutter ants farm fungus and aphids, alien insectoids might cultivate entire alien species for food, defense, or raw materials. They could terraform slowly over centuries, reshaping entire biomes to favor their preferred crops or livestock. In more expansionist species, this tendency might extend to other worlds, seeding new hives with portable ecosystems the way humans plant gardens or orchards. Cultural and political models. Not all hives need a queen in the traditional sense. Evolution could produce insectoid species with distributed reproduction, perhaps a council of reproductives rotating duties, or multiple co-equal queens presiding over different hive sectors. Governance might be highly centralized, with a single royal figure issuing orders to millions, or completely decentralized, with decisions emerging from statistical consensus of thousands of minor officials. We need only look to our own monarchical history and its variants to imagine how queens and hive dynamics might evolve. Their diplomacy with other species could be challenging. A hive culture might see no moral problem in absorbing another civilization wholesale, viewing it as the equivalent to merging colonies. Conversely, they might be baffled by human concepts of personal property or individual sovereignty, seeing them as an inefficient obstacle to the greater good. Or they might have such beliefs themselves. After all, our own tribal roots clearly incorporated concepts like group or family property in tandem with separate individual property. Theirs might too. Spacefaring Adaptations. An insectoid physiology could offer unique advantages and challenges in space. Exoskeletons provide natural radiation shielding, and many insects can survive long periods without oxygen or food by entering dormant states. Molting could be a hazard in microgravity, but also an opportunity. Imagine a zero-G molting chamber designed to recycle old chitin into building materials. A Hive starship might be a generation ship in the truest sense, with a stable reproductive system and continuous care for brood cycles over centuries of travel. Communications would be constant, with chemical and vibratory signals echoing through the bulkheads. They might even design their ships to simulate the dense, enclosed spaces of a natural hive. Open voids could be psychologically unsettling to them. Such a species might also take to asteroid colonization with ease, carving vast labyrinths into rock and sealing them for climate control, much as they would a mound or nest. Over time, these could link into vast hive networks spanning entire star systems. Indeed, they could conceivably evolve in the first place in such environments, or in planetary rings, and also serve as biological inspiration for all space robots and von Neumann probes. Final thoughts. There are a lot of examples of insectoid aliens in fiction, Ender's Game and Starship Troopers probably being the best known, followed by the Tyranids of Warhammer 40,000. And while those are hive minds, it's not always that way, and points to Adrian Tchaikovsky, who has done a book on the Tyranids himself, but has examined a lot of truly alien physiologies and psychologies in his other novels, including some novel takes on insectoid aliens beyond the usual sci-fi tropes. And as we saw today, there are a lot more possibilities than just those classic tropes, more than hive minds or even just hives, but hives have a lot going for them too. From the smallest ant trail to the mightiest imagined space empire, the logic of the hive is a potential evolutionary strategy, one that could take many forms on alien worlds. Intelligent insectoids might not be the mindless drones of pulp fiction, nor the cold, perfect machines of our nightmares. They could be artists, engineers, farmers, and philosophers, united by a collective purpose, but still rich in individuality. Their senses might reveal a universe invisible to us. Their cities could hum with chemical pulse of shared light. Their senses might reveal a universe invisible to us. Their cities could hum with the chemical pulses of shared life. Their ships might carry the warmth and hum of home across the cold void, bringing not conquest, but the slow, deliberate spread of their living civilization. And if one day our descendants stand before such beings, we may find that beneath the armor, the compound eyes, and the alien scent of their speech, there is a logic to their lives that is as old as life itself: to build, to survive, and to pass on the hive to the next generation.